The red warning lights flashed across every screen in the underground bunker as David Walsh studied the alien fleet. Approaching Earth, 300 massive warships moved through space with perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming under distant starlight. Each vessel stretched over 2 kilometers long and bristled with weapons that could turn entire cities to ash in seconds. David rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the data again. The aliens called themselves the Hegemony Empire, and they had conquered almost 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. Their military record showed no defeats, no retreats, and no mercy for species that refused to surrender immediately. Every battle followed the same pattern: overwhelming firepower, direct assault, complete victory within hours. "Sir, we've received another transmission from their fleet," said Lieutenant Barnes from across the room. Her voice carried the tension everyone felt. "Same message as before." David nodded and activated the communication system. The alien voice filled the bunker, speaking perfect English through their translation devices. "People of Earth, you have one rotation of your planet to surrender unconditionally. Submit to hegemony rule and your species will be preserved as workers. Resist and face complete extermination. This is your final warning." The message ended with the same cold finality it had carried for the past 2 days. David looked around the bunker at the faces of Earth's military leaders. General Santos sat at the main table, her weathered face showing decades of combat experience. Colonel Thomas studied tactical displays while Dr. Petrov worked frantically on technological assessments. Everyone knew the truth that nobody wanted to say out. Loud Earth's military stood no chance against the Hegemony Empire. Their most advanced warships carried weapons that seemed like toys compared to alien technology. Earth's fastest vessels could barely reach 1/10 of alien ship speeds. Their shields could not stop alien energy weapons, and their armor crumpled like paper under alien fire. The technology gap stretched across centuries of development, but David Walsh had spent his life studying military history, and he remembered something important about warfare. Superior weapons did not always guarantee victory. The ancient Chinese general Sun Tzu had written that all warfare was based on deception. The great human commanders throughout history had won battles by thinking differently than their enemies expected. "What do we know about their tactics?" David asked the room. Dr. Petrov looked up from her computer screens. "Every battle record we've analyzed shows the same approach. They form a massive line formation, advance directly at their target, and overwhelm the enemy with concentrated firepower. No flanking maneuvers, no complex strategies, just raw force applied in the most efficient way possible." General Santos leaned back in her chair. "Makes sense when you have that kind of technological advantage. Why complicate things when you can simply overpower any opposition?" David walked to the large display showing the alien fleet's current position. The ships maintained perfect geometric patterns as they traveled toward Earth. No scouts ranging ahead, no irregular movements, no apparent concern about ambush or surprise attacks. They moved with the confidence of a force that had never encountered real resistance. "They fight like a machine," David said quietly. "Efficient, predictable, and completely confident in their superiority." Lieutenant Barnes frowned. "Isn't that exactly what makes them unbeatable? They don't need complex tactics when they have overwhelming firepower." David studied the display for several more minutes while the room waited. The alien fleet would reach Earth's outer defense perimeter in less than 18 hours. Conventional military wisdom said humanity should surrender immediately and hope for merciful treatment. Every logical analysis suggested that resistance would only lead to complete annihilation. But David remembered other battles from human history where logic had been wrong. He thought about smaller forces defeating larger armies through unexpected tactics. Battles where technological disadvantages became advantages through creative thinking. Wars won not by the strongest army, but by the most adaptable one. "They've never fought humans before," David said finally. "Every species they've conquered probably tried to match their tactics with inferior technology. Direct confrontation using the same basic strategies they expect." Colonel Thomas looked up from her screens. What else could those species do? The technology gap makes any other approach seem impossible. David smiled for the first time in days. It was not a happy smile, but it carried something that had been missing from the bunker since the alien fleet's arrival. Hope. "Every human military academy teaches courses on asymmetric warfare," he said. "How smaller forces can defeat larger ones through unconventional methods. How apparent weakness can become strength when your enemy underestimates you. How the art of appearing defeated can set up your real attack. General Santos sat up straighter. You're talking about guerrilla warfare, but in space against vastly superior technology. David nodded. I'm talking about making them fight our kind of war instead of theirs. Making their strengths work against them. Making them so confused and frustrated that their perfect machine tactics become their weakness. Dr. Petrov closed her laptop. It's insane. We have maybe 50 combat-capable ships against their 300. Our weapons can barely scratch their hulls. Then we don't try to scratch their hulls, David replied. We make them think we're trying to, while we do something completely different. Something they've never seen before and won't understand until it's too late. The room fell silent as everyone considered his words. Outside the bunker, Earth's population went about their daily lives, unaware that their fate would be decided in the next few hours. Most people still hoped that diplomacy would find a solution, or that humanity's military would find some way to fight back successfully. David Walsh knew better. Diplomacy would fail because the hegemony empire had no interest in negotiation. Conventional military action would fail because the technology gap was insurmountable. But there was a third option that no alien species had ever tried against the empire. Human strategy. The art of war that had evolved through thousands of years of human conflict. The accumulated wisdom of every great military mind in human history. The understanding that victory belonged not always to the strongest, but to the smartest. David turned to face the room full of Earth's military leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, he said quietly, we're going to teach the galaxy something new about warfare. Ambassador Liu straightened her formal dress uniform as the alien transport beam materialized around her. The sensation felt like being dissolved and rebuilt in seconds, leaving her slightly dizzy as she appeared inside the Hegemony Empire's flagship. The alien corridor stretched ahead of her, its walls gleaming with an odd blue metal that seemed to pulse with internal light. 2 alien guards flanked her immediately. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, their gray skin covered in natural armor plates. Their faces showed no emotion as they gestured for her to follow them deeper into the ship. Liu had studied every piece of intelligence Earth possessed about hegemony, physiology, and psychology. But seeing them in person still sent chills down her spine. The flagship was enormous beyond human comprehension. Liu's escort led her through corridors that could accommodate ground vehicles, past chambers filled with alien technology that hummed with unknown energy. Everything she saw reinforced Earth's hopeless technological disadvantage. But that was exactly why she had volunteered for this mission. Admiral Kiros waited for her in a chamber that could have held Earth's entire United Nations Assembly. The alien commander stood behind a crystalline desk that displayed holographic star charts showing the Empire's vast territory. His 4 eyes focused on Liu with predatory intensity as she approached. Human representative, Cairo spoke through a translation device that made his voice sound mechanical. You have come to surrender your species? Liu bowed formally, exactly as Earth's cultural experts had instructed. Honored Admiral, I have come to discuss terms of our world's integration into your great empire. The alien's head tilted slightly. In their intelligence briefings, this gesture indicated curiosity or mild interest. Liu had memorized dozens of such details during her preparation, though she hoped Kairos would not realize how much humanity actually knew about his species. Integration? Kairos repeated. Your species possesses nothing of value to the Empire. Your technology is primitive. Your world's limited to a single system. Your military capabilities insignificant. You exist now only because the Empire chooses to be merciful to those who surrender quickly. Liu nodded respectfully while her mind catalogued every detail of the chamber around her. The holographic displays showed tactical information about the hegemony fleet. Ship positions, weapon readiness indicators, and communication channels were all visible to anyone who could read the alien symbols. Earth's cryptographers would find this information invaluable. Great Admiral, Liu said carefully, my world recognizes the Empire's vast superiority. We wish only to understand how we might serve your great civilization most effectively. Our people have many different skills and abilities. Perhaps some might prove useful to the Empire's continued expansion. Kairos made a sound that the translation device rendered as laughter. Human arrogance is amusing. You believe your primitive species possesses skills that could benefit an empire spanning 1,000 worlds? Liu appeared to consider his words thoughtfully. Perhaps not, Honored Admiral. We are indeed primitive, but we have observed that the Empire values efficiency and conquest. If we could better understand the Empire's methods, we might help other primitive worlds surrender more quickly when the Empire encounters them." This was pure psychological manipulation, and Liu held her breath as Kiros processed her words. The alien commander's pride was exactly what Earth's analysts had predicted it would be. He wanted to demonstrate the Empire's overwhelming superiority to this primitive human. "The Empire's military doctrine is perfection itself," Kiros declared. "We have refined the art of conquest across 10,000 battles. Direct assault with overwhelming force eliminates resistance before it can organize. No enemy has ever withstood the Empire's concentrated firepower when properly applied." Liu nodded enthusiastically, while memorizing every word. Such wisdom must have taken centuries to develop. "Do all Empire fleets use identical tactics?" Kiros gestured to the holographic displays around his desk. "Observe the perfection of Empire formation." The displays shifted to show detailed fleet arrangements. Each vessel maintains precise position to maximize overlapping fire zones. Energy weapons concentrate on primary targets while support ships eliminate secondary resistance. Victory is achieved through mathematical certainty rather than chance. For the next hour, Admiral Kiros demonstrated the Empire's military doctrine with obvious pride. He showed Liu detailed tactical formations, weapon deployment strategies, and communication protocols. The alien commander explained how every Empire victory followed the same basic pattern. Identify the enemy's strongest defenses, concentrate overwhelming firepower against those defenses, then systematically eliminate all remaining resistance. Liu asked careful questions that encouraged Kiros to reveal even more information. She expressed admiration for the Empire's logical approach to warfare and wondered aloud how human military thinking compared to such advanced strategies. Kiros was happy to explain exactly how primitive and ineffective human tactics would be against Empire forces. "Your species thinks in terms of individual combat and small unit tactics," Kiros explained. "The Empire has evolved beyond such limitations. We wage war as a single massive organism, each ship fulfilling its precise function within a greater design. No human strategy could comprehend the scale and coordination of true imperial warfare." As the meeting continued, Liu realized something that Earth's intelligence analysts had only suspected. The hegemony empire was militarily powerful but intellectually rigid. They had developed tactics that worked so well against conventional resistance that they had stopped adapting or innovating. Their 1,000 victories had made them supremely confident but also predictable. Every empire battle followed the same pattern because the empire had never encountered an enemy that forced them to change that pattern. Their overwhelming technological superiority meant they never needed to develop complex strategies or consider unconventional approaches to warfare. They were like a perfectly efficient machine that could only function in one specific way. Liu spent another hour asking questions about Empire logistics, command structure, and decision-making processes. She learned that all tactical decisions flowed upward through rigid hierarchy, that individual ship commanders had no authority to deviate from standard formations, and that the Empire considered any departure from established doctrine to be inefficient and potentially dangerous. When the meeting finally ended, Admiral Kiros seemed satisfied that he had impressed the primitive human with demonstrations of Empire superiority. He gave Liu 48 hours to return to Earth and convince humanity to surrender unconditionally. Any delay would result in immediate planetary bombardment. As Liu was transported back to her ship, she carried with her something more valuable than any weapon Earth could build. She possessed detailed knowledge of Empire tactics, psychology, and most importantly, their greatest weakness. The hegemony empire was powerful beyond human imagination, but they thought about warfare in only one way. Liu smiled as her ship set course for Earth. Admiral Kiros had just handed humanity the key to defeating the Empire. He had shown them exactly how the Empire expected their enemies to fight, which meant humanity could do something completely different. Earth's military leaders would soon learn that their enemy was not just technologically superior. Their enemy was also completely unprepared for the kind of war that humans were about to fight. Commander Rodriguez watched through her ship's view screen as alien energy beams tore through the hull of the destroyer beside her. The human vessel exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the darkness of space for several seconds, before fading to nothing. Her communications officer reported 2 more ships lost in the past minute. their crews vaporized by weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. All remaining ships, retreat to emergency coordinates, Rodriguez ordered into her microphone. Her voice carried exactly the right mix of panic and desperation that she had practiced for hours. We cannot hold this position. Repeat, all ships fall back immediately. The surviving human vessels turned away from the alien scout force and fled deeper into Earth's solar system. Their engines strained to reach maximum speed while enemy fire pursued them across millions of kilometers of empty space. 3 more ships died during the retreat, their destruction adding to the growing debris field that marked humanity's first military encounter with the hegemony empire. Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile as her ship reached the designated fallback position. Every detail of the battle had proceeded exactly according to plan. The destroyed ships had been obsolete vessels filled with sophisticated recording equipment instead of full crews. The few personnel aboard had escaped in hidden life pods before the engagement began. The entire battle was a carefully orchestrated performance designed to convince the aliens that humanity fought exactly as they expected. Deep within the asteroid belt, Dr. Petrov analyzed the data streams flowing in from sensors hidden throughout the battle zone. Every alien weapon discharge, every tactical movement, every communication frequency used by the enemy scouts had been recorded and cataloged. The information was worth far more than the old ships Rodriguez had sacrificed to obtain it. Energy weapon frequency analysis complete, Dr. Petrov announced to the team of scientists working around her. Their particle beams operate on a narrow bandwidth that should be vulnerable to specific interference patterns. Shield harmonics show consistent weak points that we can exploit with properly tuned disruption fields. Her assistant looked up from his computer terminal. What about their tactical formations? Did they reveal anything useful about their standard deployment patterns? Dr. Petrov pulled up the tactical analysis on her main screen. Better than we hoped. They used textbook Empire formations identical to what Ambassador Liu observed on their flagship. No adaptation to local conditions, no consideration for asteroid field navigation, no variation from their standard approaches. They fight exactly like machines following a program. The real victory of the fake battle was not the intelligence gathered about alien technology, but what it revealed about alien psychology. The Empire scouts had engaged the human forces with complete confidence, never considering that their enemy might have hidden motives or secret objectives. They saw primitive ships fleeing in panic and assumed they had witnessed another routine demonstration of Imperial superiority. General Santos reviewed the battle, reports from her command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. How long before their main fleet arrives? Approximately 18 hours, replied her intelligence officer. Long-range sensors show they're maintaining standard approach velocity. No change in formation or apparent concern about our defensive capabilities. Santos nodded grimly. The fake defeat had bought Earth precious time to complete preparations, but it had also confirmed their worst fears about the coming battle. The alien main fleet carried enough firepower to sterilize every populated world in the solar system. Even if humanity's secret weapons worked perfectly, they faced overwhelming odds against an enemy that had never known defeat. But Santos had studied military history long enough to know that overwhelming odds could sometimes work in favor of the underdog. Desperate situations forced creative thinking that comfortable superiority never required. The hegemony empire's 1,000 victories had made them powerful but also predictable, while humanity's desperate situation had forced them to become creative. Major Foster checked the status of the hidden weapon platforms scattered throughout Earth's orbital space. Each installation looked like harmless debris or defunct satellites when viewed through alien sensors. In reality, they were sophisticated warfare systems designed by human engineers who had studied every piece of captured alien technology. Stealth systems operational on all platforms, Foster reported. Power cores charged and ready. Targeting computers have been programmed with enemy formation patterns based on intelligence from the scout engagement. The hidden platforms represented humanity's most advanced military technology, but they were not designed to fight a conventional battle. Human engineers had built them to exploit specific weaknesses in alien systems that no enemy had ever targeted before. They would get one chance to surprise the hegemony fleet, and that surprise had to count for everything. Colonel Thomas coordinated the psychological warfare elements of Earth's defense plan from a facility that did not officially exist. Her teams had prepared information packages that would be transmitted to every alien vessel during the coming battle. The messages were carefully crafted to exploit what Ambassador Liu had learned about hegemony command structure and decision-making processes. "Disinformation packages ready for transmission," Thomas announced. "We have prepared false intelligence about human fleet strength, fabricated technical specifications for non-existent weapons, and psychological profiles designed to make their commanders second-guess their tactical assumptions." The disinformation campaign was based on a simple principle that human military theorists had understood for centuries. An enemy who was uncertain about your capabilities would make mistakes that a confident enemy would never make. If the aliens could be made to doubt their intelligence about human defenses, they might hesitate at critical moments or deploy their forces inefficiently. As Earth's preparations neared completion, David Walsh reviewed the overall battle plan one final time. Every element depended on making the aliens believe they understood humanity's military capabilities while actually facing something completely different. The fake defeat of the Scout engagement had reinforced alien assumptions about human weakness while concealing the true nature of Earth's defensive strategy. "Are we ready?" General Santos asked as the final reports came in from around the solar system. David looked at the status displays showing human forces positioned throughout Earth's orbital space. Hidden platforms, disguised ships, stealth satellites, and quantum communication networks formed a defensive web that existed nowhere in alien intelligence estimates. Everything depended on the aliens continuing to underestimate humanity until the trap could be sprung. "As ready as we can be," David replied. "The aliens think they're facing a primitive species that will crumble under direct assault. They have no idea they're about to fight the first asymmetric warfare campaign in galactic history." Outside Earth's atmosphere, long-range sensors detected the approaching hegemony main fleet. 300 massive warships moved through space in perfect formation, their commanders confident that humanity's defeat would follow the same pattern as every other Imperial victory. They expected their enemy to meet them with conventional tactics and inferior technology. The aliens had no way of knowing that humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of making strength appear as weakness. Victory looked like defeat, and careful planning seemed like desperate improvisation. They were about to learn why no army in human history had ever survived against superior human strategy. Admiral Kairos stared at his tactical display in growing frustration as another supply convoy reported attack by unknown human forces. The convoy had been traveling through a sector that his scouts had cleared only hours earlier. Yet somehow enemy vessels had appeared from nowhere to strike at his logistics chain before vanishing back into empty space. "Report," Kairos demanded from his intelligence officer. "Another hit-and-run attack, Admiral. 6 supply ships destroyed. Escort vessels report no visual contact with attacking force. Enemy ships appeared on sensors for less than 30 seconds before disappearing again. This made the 7th such attack in the past 2 days. Each time, human forces struck at isolated elements of the hegemony fleet with precise coordination before melting away like ghosts. The attacks followed no pattern that Imperial tactical doctrine could predict or counter. They seemed to come from all directions and no direction simultaneously. Captain Walsh coordinated the guerrilla campaign from his command ship, hidden deep within Saturn's rings. The ice particles provided perfect concealment for human vessels, while giving them easy access to attack routes throughout the outer solar system. His tactical display showed the positions of dozens of small human task forces, each operating independently while following a carefully orchestrated strategy. "Strike Team 7 reports successful attack on enemy fuel depot," his communications officer announced. "No casualties, clean withdrawal to fallback position." Walsh smiled as he updated the tactical situation. Human forces were not trying to destroy the alien fleet through direct confrontation. Instead, they were systematically dismantling the Imperial war machine through thousands of small cuts that individually seemed insignificant, but collectively were devastating. Major Foster led one of the most successful strike teams, using tactics she had learned from studying ancient Earth guerrilla campaigns. Her small squadron of modified civilian vessels looked like harmless cargo haulers to alien sensors, but they carried sophisticated stealth systems and weapons specifically designed to exploit hegemony technological weaknesses. "Target acquired," Foster announced to her team as they approached another alien supply convoy. Remember, hit fast, hit hard, and get out before they can respond. Her ships dropped out of stealth mode at point-blank range and unleashed concentrated fire at the convoy's most vulnerable points. The attacks were not designed to overpower alien defenses, but to cause maximum disruption with minimum exposure to return fire. Within seconds, the human ships had disabled their targets and disappeared back into the darkness of space. The psychological effect on the hegemony fleet was exactly what human strategists had intended. Imperial commanders found themselves facing an enemy that refused to fight according to established rules of warfare. Human forces appeared where intelligence said they could not exist, struck at targets that should have been perfectly safe, and vanished before Imperial forces could mount effective counterattacks. Dr. Petrov monitored the electronic warfare aspects of the campaign from her hidden base on one of Jupiter's moons. Her teams had developed sophisticated systems for intercepting alien communications and feeding false information back through their networks. The goal was not just to gather intelligence, but to create confusion and uncertainty within the enemy command structure. "We're detecting increasing communication between Imperial ships," Dr. Petrov reported to the command staff. "Their officers are questioning their intelligence estimates and requesting new tactical guidance. Command confusion is spreading through their fleet faster than we hoped." The electronic warfare campaign was based on a fundamental truth about military psychology that human commanders had understood for millennia. Uncertainty was far more dangerous to military effectiveness than any physical weapon. An enemy who doubted their own information would make mistakes that a confident enemy would never make. Colonel Thomas expanded the psychological warfare campaign by broadcasting carefully crafted messages to individual alien vessels. The transmissions claimed to come from other Imperial ships and contained false reports about human fleet strength, secret weapons, and hidden defensive installations. Each message was designed to increase doubt and paranoia within the enemy ranks. "We're seeing the desired effect," Thomas reported. "Intercepted alien communications show increasing concern about human capabilities. Some Imperial commanders are requesting permission to withdraw from advanced positions." The disinformation campaign exploited weaknesses in the hegemony command structure that Ambassador Liu had identified during her meeting with Admiral Kairos. The rigid hierarchy that made Imperial forces so efficient in conventional warfare became a liability when false information entered the system and spread upward through the ranks. As the days passed, Admiral Kairos watched his overwhelming technological advantage slowly eroded by an enemy that refused to be overwhelmed. Human forces seemed to be everywhere at once, striking from directions that should have been impossible, and using tactics that violated every principle of logical military engagement. "Status report," Kairos demanded from his staff. His logistics officer stepped forward reluctantly. "Fuel supplies down 30% due to convoy attacks. Communications efficiency reduced by constant jamming and false signals. Morale reports indicate confusion among ship commanders about enemy capabilities." Kairos studied the tactical display showing his fleet's positions. The formations that had brought victory across 1,000 worlds now seemed clumsy and predictable when facing an enemy that attacked from unexpected angles. His ships were designed for direct confrontation with enemy fleets, not for hunting ghosts that struck without warning and disappeared without trace. "What are our intelligence estimates of human fleet strength?" Kairos asked. His intelligence officer hesitated. "Uncertain, Admiral. Initial estimates suggested 50 combat vessels, but attack patterns indicate much larger forces. Either humans possess significantly more ships than detected, or they have developed stealth technology superior to our sensors." Both possibilities were equally disturbing to Imperial commanders who had never faced an enemy capable of technological surprise. The hegemony empire had built their military doctrine on the assumption that they possessed overwhelming advantages in every area of warfare. The idea that a primitive species might have developed capabilities that Imperial science had overlooked challenged fundamental beliefs about Imperial supremacy. David Walsh reviewed the campaign's progress from his hidden command center and smiled at what human strategy had accomplished. The alien fleet was still technologically superior and numerically overwhelming, but they were no longer fighting with the confidence that had made them invincible. Doubt and confusion were spreading through their ranks like a virus. undermining the psychological foundations of their military effectiveness. Phase 1 objectives achieved, David announced to his staff. Enemy fleet showing signs of tactical confusion and reduced operational efficiency. Ready to initiate Phase 2 of the campaign. General Santos nodded approvingly. What's the status of our special weapons platforms? Hidden and ready, David replied. The aliens still have no idea what's waiting for them when they finally commit to a direct assault on Earth. They think they're facing a conventional guerrilla campaign, but we're about to show them something they've never seen before. The Hegemony Empire had dominated the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force applied in predictable patterns. They had never faced an enemy that understood the deeper principles of warfare, the psychological and strategic elements that determined victory and defeat. Beyond simple firepower comparisons, human, military thinking had evolved through thousands of years of conflict between equally matched opponents. It had been refined by commanders who could not rely on technological superiority and had been forced to develop tactical creativity, strategic deception, and psychological manipulation to achieve victory against superior numbers or equipment. Admiral Kiros was about to discover that all the technological advancement in the galaxy could not prepare his forces for an enemy that had mastered the art of war itself. Admiral Kiros paced across his flagship's command bridge while his staff officers avoided making eye contact. The tactical situation had deteriorated beyond anything in Imperial military history. His overwhelming force of 300 warships was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to exist everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Give me the casualty report, Kiros demanded, though he already knew it would be worse than yesterday's numbers. His aide consulted her data tablet with obvious reluctance. 47 ships lost or severely damaged in the past week, Admiral. Supply efficiency down 60% due to ongoing convoy attacks. Communications reliability compromised by constant jamming and false signals. Request for reinforcements denied by Imperial Command due to concerns about resource allocation. The numbers told a story that no Imperial commander had ever faced before. The Hegemony fleet was being defeated not through direct confrontation, but through systematic dismantlement by an enemy that refused to fight according to established military doctrine. Every tactical manual in the Imperial database had become useless against human strategy. Colonel Thomas monitored the psychological warfare campaign from her secure bunker and smiled at the intelligence reports. Flowing in from intercepted alien communications, fear and doubt were spreading through the enemy fleet faster than any physical weapon could have achieved. Imperial officers were questioning their orders, doubting their intelligence and losing confidence in their technological superiority. Enemy morale analysis complete, Thomas announced to her team. Intercepted communications show increasing requests for tactical guidance from ship commanders. Several vessels have reported technical failures that our analysis suggests are actually crew sabotage motivated by fear of continued human attacks. The psychological campaign had exploited a fundamental weakness in the Hegemony military structure that human strategists had identified. Through careful study of their enemy, the Imperial forces were accustomed to victory through overwhelming technological advantage, which meant they had never developed the mental resilience necessary to fight a prolonged campaign against a determined opponent. Major Foster coordinated her latest strike from a hidden position near one of Neptune's moons. Her expanded task force now included ships that had officially been destroyed in earlier engagements, but were actually operating under false identities with modified sensor signatures. The aliens believed they were facing fresh reinforcements when they were actually fighting the same human vessels again and again. All teams report ready for simultaneous strike, Foster announced to her dispersed squadron. Target priority is enemy command vessels. Hit their leadership and communications, then withdraw before they can coordinate a response. The attack proceeded with perfect coordination across multiple sectors of space. Human forces struck at isolated Imperial command ships while broadcasting false distress signals that drew other enemy vessels into carefully prepared ambush zones. The aliens found themselves fighting battles on dozens of fronts simultaneously, their rigid command structure unable to adapt to the constantly changing tactical situation. Dr. Petrov had developed new electronic warfare techniques that went far beyond simple jamming and false signals. Her systems now actively invaded alien computer networks, subtly altering navigation data, weapons targeting information, and tactical displays. The changes were small enough to avoid detection, but significant enough to degrade Imperial military effectiveness. Network intrusion successful across 40% of enemy fleet, Dr. Petrov reported. We're now feeding false targeting data to their weapon systems and introducing small errors into their navigation computers. They're starting to accidentally fire on their own ships during combat engagements. The electronic warfare campaign was achieving something that no previous enemy of the hegemony empire had ever accomplished. It was turning the aliens' technological superiority against them by corrupting the computer systems that their advanced weapons depended on for accurate targeting and coordination. As the Imperial fleet situation continued to deteriorate, Admiral Kairos faced a crisis of confidence that threatened the psychological foundations of his command authority. His officers were beginning to question orders that had previously been followed without hesitation. Some ship commanders were requesting permission to withdraw from advanced positions, while others suggested abandoning the invasion entirely. "Admiral," his intelligence officer said hesitantly, "we're receiving reports of unusual human activity in Earth's orbital space. Long-range sensors detect what might be defensive installations, but they don't match any known human technology." Kairos studied the sensor data with growing concern. After weeks of fighting an enemy that seemed to possess capabilities far beyond their apparent technological level, he was beginning to suspect that human military strength had been seriously underestimated. The possibility that Earth possessed secret weapons or hidden defenses had become a constant source of anxiety for Imperial planners. "What does tactical analysis suggest?" Kairos asked. His tactical officer displayed several different assessments on the main screen. "Uncertain, Admiral. The installations could be advanced defensive platforms, decoy systems designed to confuse our sensors, or debris from previous battles. Human deception capabilities have proven far more sophisticated than our initial intelligence estimated." The uncertainty was exactly what human strategists had intended to create. By mixing real defensive preparations with elaborate deception measures, Earth's military had made it impossible for the aliens to accurately assess their true defensive capabilities. Imperial commanders were now forced to assume the worst-case scenario when planning any direct assault. David Walsh reviewed the campaign's progress and felt satisfied that human strategy was achieving its intended effects. The hegemony fleet remained technologically superior, but they were no longer fighting with the psychological confidence that had made them invincible. Doubt, confusion, and fear had replaced the certainty that had carried them to victory across 1,000 worlds. "Enemy fleet cohesion is breaking down," David announced to the Joint Command Staff. Intercepted communications show increasing disagreement between ship commanders. Some want to retreat, others want to escalate attacks, and still others are requesting different tactical approaches. Their unified command structure is fragmenting under pressure. General Santos nodded approvingly. "Are we ready for the final phase?" David studied the tactical displays showing both human and alien force positions throughout the solar system. Everything was in place for the culminating battle that would determine Earth's fate. The aliens still possessed overwhelming firepower, but they would be fighting with divided attention, compromised information, and shattered confidence. "Ready as we'll ever be," David replied. "The aliens are about to learn the final lesson in human military strategy." Admiral Kairos made the decision that Earth strategists had been maneuvering him toward for weeks. Frustrated by his inability to achieve decisive victory through conventional tactics, increasingly concerned about human capabilities he didn't understand, and facing pressure from his own officers to end the campaign quickly, he chose to commit his entire remaining fleet to one massive assault on Earth itself. It was exactly the decision that human strategy had been designed to provoke. By appearing weak while being strong, by seeming divided while being coordinated, and by creating uncertainty where the aliens expected clarity, Earth's defenders had successfully manipulated their enemy into making the tactical mistake that would determine the war's outcome. The hegemony empire was about to discover that superior technology meant nothing against an enemy that understood the deepest principles of warfare itself. The massive hegemony fleet moved toward Earth in the largest military formation the galaxy had ever seen. 200 remaining warships arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. Admiral Kairos had committed every vessel under his command to this final assault, determined to crush human resistance through overwhelming force. Applied with mathematical precision, David Walsh watched the alien approach from his command center and felt the weight of humanity's fate resting on the strategy he had spent months developing. Every element of the plan depended on precise timing, perfect coordination, and the aliens continuing to underestimate human capabilities until the moment of truth arrived. All hidden platforms report ready, Major Foster announced from her concealed position among Earth's orbital debris. Stealth systems operating normally, power cores charged, targeting computers locked on enemy formation. The hidden weapons platforms represented the culmination of human engineering and strategic thinking. Built using captured alien technology and designed to exploit weaknesses that no enemy had ever targeted before, they had remained undetected throughout the weeks of guerrilla warfare. The aliens had no idea that Earth's orbital space contained enough firepower to threaten their entire fleet. General Santos coordinated the final preparations from her underground command bunker. Status of all defensive elements. Phase 1 forces in position and ready, Colonel Thomas reported. Psychological warfare broadcast prepared for transmission on all alien communication frequencies. Electronic warfare systems active, Dr. Petrov added. We have deep network access to 70% of enemy vessels, ready to execute coordinated system disruption on your command. Guerrilla strike teams dispersed throughout the combat zone, Major Foster confirmed. All units standing by for simultaneous attack. David looked at the tactical display showing the complex web of human forces positioned throughout Earth's local space. Hidden platforms, disguised ships, stealth satellites, electronic warfare systems, and strike teams formed a defensive network that existed nowhere in alien intelligence estimates. The hegemony fleet was flying into a trap that had been months in the making. Admiral Kairos studied his own tactical displays with growing confidence. His fleet's sensors detected only minimal human defensive preparations around Earth. A few orbital platforms, some outdated military vessels, and the usual civilian traffic that surrounded any inhabited world. Nothing that could pose a serious threat to Imperial firepower concentrated in proper formation. Begin primary bombardment, Kairos ordered. Target all detected military installations and orbital infrastructure. Prepare for planetary surface bombardment once orbital defenses are eliminated. The hegemony fleet opened fire with weapons that could vaporize mountains and boil oceans. Energy beams lanced through space toward their targets with precision that reflected millennia of military engineering. The few human installations visible to alien sensors exploded in brilliant flashes that lit up Earth's orbital space like artificial stars. But the installations that died under alien fire were decoys, carefully constructed to look like genuine defensive platforms while concealing Earth's real preparations. As the aliens celebrated what appeared to be easy victory over primitive human defenses, the true battle was only beginning. Execute Phase 1, David commanded. Throughout Earth's orbital space, hidden weapons platforms suddenly came online and opened fire simultaneously. The stealth systems that had concealed them for months dropped away to reveal sophisticated defensive installations that bristled with weapons specifically designed to exploit hegemony technological weaknesses. Admiral Kairos watched in shock as his tactical display exploded with new contacts. Hundreds of previously undetected human weapons platforms appeared from nowhere and began firing on his fleet with coordinated precision. The energy signatures matched no known human technology, yet the weapons were clearly effective against Imperial shielding and armor. Report, Kairos demanded as his flagship shuddered under impacts from weapons that should not exist. Unknown weapons platforms throughout the combat zone, his tactical officer announced with barely controlled panic. They were completely invisible to our sensors until they opened fire. Energy weapons appear to be modified versions of our own technology. The hidden platforms had been built using alien technology captured during the guerrilla campaign and reverse-engineered by human scientists who understood their enemy's capabilities better than the enemy understood theirs. Each platform targeted specific weaknesses in Imperial defensive systems while avoiding the aliens' technological strengths. As the space battle raged around Earth, Dr. Petrov activated the electronic warfare systems that had spent weeks infiltrating alien computer networks. Throughout the hegemony fleet, weapons targeting systems began malfunctioning, Navigation computers displayed false information, and communication networks carried contradictory orders. Electronic attack successful, Dr. Petrov reported. Enemy fleet coordination breaking down. Multiple ships reporting systems failures and requesting technical assistance. The electronic warfare campaign achieved in minutes what conventional weapons might have taken hours to accomplish. Imperial ships began firing on each other as corrupted targeting data identified friendly vessels as enemy contacts. Navigation errors caused collisions between ships that had maintained perfect formation for months. Communication failures prevented commanders from coordinating responses to human attacks. Major Foster led the guerrilla strike teams in simultaneous attacks on isolated alien vessels throughout the combat zone. Her forces had spent weeks studying Imperial fleet operations, and now struck at exactly the moments when enemy ships were most vulnerable to coordinated assault. All strike teams report successful engagement, Foster announced. Enemy command vessels taking heavy damage. Imperial fleet formation beginning to fragment under pressure. Colonel Thomas activated the psychological warfare broadcasts that had been prepared specifically for this moment. The transmissions flooded alien communication networks with carefully crafted messages designed to create maximum confusion and panic within enemy ranks. Psychological attack initiated, Thomas reported. Broadcasting false reports of human reinforcements, secret weapons, and Imperial fleet defeats. Enemy communications showing increasing signs of panic and confusion. The psychological campaign was the final element in humanity's strategic masterpiece. By the time Admiral Kiros realized that his fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy he had underestimated, it was too late to mount effective countermeasures. His ships were scattered across thousands of kilometers of space. Their coordination destroyed, their morale shattered, and their technological advantages neutralized by human ingenuity. David Walsh watched the tactical display as the hegemony fleet began to disintegrate under coordinated human attack. Ships that had seemed invincible weeks earlier were now fleeing in random directions, while human forces pursued them with relentless efficiency. The aliens' overwhelming technological superiority had been turned against them through strategic brilliance that they had never encountered before. Enemy fleet in full retreat, General Santos announced. Long-range sensors show surviving ships leaving the solar system at maximum velocity. Admiral Kiros found himself commanding less than 50 vessels from a fleet that had once numbered in the hundreds. His flagship systems were failing, his communications with other ships were sporadic, and his confidence in Imperial invincibility had been shattered by an enemy that fought unlike any opponent in galactic history. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance, Kiros ordered, his voice carrying defeat for the first time in his military career. Prepare emergency transmission to Imperial Command. As the surviving hegemony ships fled Earth's solar system, they carried with them news that would transform the galaxy's understanding of warfare. For the first time in Imperial history, a technologically superior fleet had been defeated not by greater firepower, but by superior strategy, psychological warfare, and tactical innovation. The message that Admiral Kiros transmitted to Imperial Command would spread throughout the galaxy within days. A primitive species called humanity had achieved the impossible by defeating the hegemony empire through methods that no other species had ever attempted. They had won not because they were stronger, but because they were smarter. David Walsh stood before the assembled leaders of Earth's defense forces and smiled at what human strategy had accomplished. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just taught the galaxy a new lesson about warfare. Superior technology means nothing against superior thinking. The victory at Earth would inspire enslaved worlds throughout the galaxy to reconsider their own possibilities for resistance. The hegemony empire's aura of invincibility had been shattered by a species that understood something no other galactic civilization had ever mastered: the art of war itself. Human military thinking, refined through thousands of years of conflict and strategic innovation, had proven superior to any technological advantage. Earth had shown the galaxy that victory belonged not to the strongest army, but to the most intelligent one. The age of human strategy had begun,